Hello, everyone. Michael is just joining like in 2 minutes, so let's wait for Michael to join in. Hi, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. I just wanted to apologize that we just a little bit late, around 5 minutes. So we are going to discuss about a very important topic. Many of you might be filing employment-based visas like EB-101 or preparing for EB-2 and IW. And we are talking extensively today about the recommendation letters. And we've been knowing that for years, recommendation letters were treated as the backbone of extraordinary ability petitions. Strong titles, long resumes, big names, but those were once enough. But today we are seeing a clear shift from the USCIS, and USCIS is no longer impressed by who is writing the letter, but they are more focused on what the letter proves. So let's discuss and move ahead with the topic. We have Michael with us. Michael, all yours.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody's quiet. All right. So let's get started. So as Swati said, used to, there was a focus more on the breadth of information, breadth of documentation rather than the depth. Which means that they're looking at, did you cover the criteria? And yes, you have all this documentation that proves it. And specifically on letters, they were less worried about who was writing the letter, and more about what the letter said in terms of, did it give enough information? The thing is that it's something I tell people all the time in the immigration world. If you ask your mama to write something for you, she'll say anything you want her to say, right? So if your mama is willing to say anything you want to say, then that makes your mama's testimony about what you do not credible. So we extend that a little further back out and we say, okay, if I have a friend who works with me in X field and he knows that I need to apply for my immigration paperwork, and he's going to be willing to say whatever I need him to say, maybe inflate my role in a project and make it sound like I was more in charge of the project rather than just a person involved in the project. So the government has started to take this and has applied it to like letter writing, and the amount of weight that they put onto the writing in each individual letter in order to determine if that letter, more than anything, is credible, right? So this is really about a credibility issue. And then the other side of it is about, okay, I have my former CEO for my company and he's well known in X area field, but he's writing a letter of recommendation for me in a field that he's not an expert in, but because he was my CEO and he knows me and he knows what I did, he's recommending me for something. They're putting less weight on those and more weight on people who actually have high level of expertise in the area that you're stating you have a high level of expertise in, to verify as a independent third party that what you're saying is true. So let's look at it. So right now, key angles: depth over breadth. Why the 10 week criteria fails, and what makes evidence persuasive now, how it works, the professionals that want inside adjudication strategies and not just checklists. So let's look at it a little bit. So the RFE playbook, everybody knows what an RFE is, a request for additional evidence, to respond for the EB1As and IWs, O1 request, without losing the case. So the RFE language that's usually used is, it's asking for more, right? And there's a lot of people who have certain strategies they use for this. In fact, I had one person that was looking to do an EB1A and they said, what's your strategy for overcoming an RFE? And if any of you have been on a previous webinar, you will have already heard the story. And I was like, well, I don't have a strategy for overcoming an RFE until I see the RFE. Oh, well, I went to another attorney that said they're going to hold back documentation when they submit my application so that they have something to respond to the RFE if it comes. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you withhold information and documentation that could help prove your case and win your case so that when they ask you for more documentation, you already have it to provide to them? Right? That is not a strategy. That's a failure of legal representation, in my opinion. But you want to submit everything that you have, but you want to do it right the first time. And that would include making sure that your application is complete. What worked before is not working now. That is very clear. That is super clear. What happened before and how they looked at things before, where you just had a bunch of information, that doesn't work today. So how do we make sure that we're using in-depth and focusing specifically on the letters? So high-level applicants, they often fail because their case is presented as accomplishments, not as a narrative. Okay, so you're trying to narrate your life to them, educationally, experientially, procedurally, in other words, the things that you've actually done, accomplishments. And so storytelling helps you be able to have a connected story about your life and the reason that your application should meet the theory or one theory of approval, right? So there's a theory of approval. What is that? You have to show that amongst the world's population, you have extraordinary ability. Okay, what does extraordinary mean? Extraordinary means that everyone else is the ordinary. Okay, so we're talking about people similarly situated. These are AI workers and people that are working on coding AI, creating AI. You have to show that you are a whole nother level. right? You are above all of these folks, right? And that doesn't mean you're above everyone in the field, right? It's not like you're the top dog, right? That's different. This extraordinary just means that there's the normal people that work in this field that are similarly situated to you, that you have done something or are doing something that proves that your work is better. So extraordinary, it really works with the storytelling to meet the legal criteria to create that one theory of approval. Why should I be approved? It's a really fresh angle, okay? Because a lot of people have been more worried about the checklist approach. Check, 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 check. I checked all the boxes and now I should be approved. Whereas what we've seen is the government's like, no, yeah, you've got the documentation, but we need to see why this documentation makes you extraordinary. So having that one theory of approval approach with inside of like this storytelling criteria, and then how the officers read it, because you have to remember, okay, so something that's a secret sauce that not a lot of people know, and even the government hasn't admitted this yet, but they are using AI to review applications now. So immigration is taking your application, popping it into, I don't know which AI, I don't know what they're using. I just know that they're using it because of the RFEs that we've seen and because of some of the responses and some of the errors that we've received on behalf of USCIS. We know that they're using some type of that technology, an AI technology, in order to review applications. What is that technology doing? It's doing the same thing my AI does. My AI that I built takes a document and it will review it, analyze it for deficits. How can I make this better? What information is missing? What information seems like, I don't know if you guys know Shakespeare, but Shakespeare, he in some point says, the lady doth protest too much. Okay. So that means if the lady says she doesn't like you over and over and over again, maybe she's still around telling you she doesn't like you. She doth protest too much. Maybe she does actually like you, right? Like she's telling herself she doesn't, right? So this is the same thing with USCIS. They're looking at stuff and going, oh, the lady doth protest too much. Like she's adding all of this superfluous stuff that's not actually depth. And so maybe it's because there is no depth, right? So then they begin to question whether or not your application is valid and should be approved. And the AI is doing that for them. Like, get rid of all this fluff. Now let's summarize the case. What did this person actually do? What have they done it in? How does that prove they're extraordinary? What are the deficits? And they're using that in order to have the ability to send out RFEs and NOIDs. So if it's big enough and there's enough in that response, that summarization, response, and analysis, that's when they're sending out NOIDs. Now, I want to be very clear about this. This is not legal advice. I am a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is my opinion based on me talking to the other tech people in the immigration world and talking to immigration tech. So USCIS, I actually have conversations occasionally with their tech group. So seeing this, they have not admitted this, but based on what we're seeing, the only logical explanation for how we're seeing things happen is that they're using a technology in order to review. But remember, the technology was based off of a human mind, right? And is an algorithm. So it's looking for whatever biases or whatever information the human put in, right? Very important because it reads it the way that the human told it to. So if the human is trying to figure out why you qualify, you have to tell them why you qualify. And doing it with just a bunch of paperwork is no longer going to work. So you need to make sure that your letters come from the right spot, because we're focusing more on letters today, even though I'm kind of covering a broad scope. So strategic filing choices for founders, engineers, and physicians. So you would want to make sure that other people and executives, other people that are similarly situated but are not related to you, are the ones providing a strategic backup for what you've done, right? That could cost you money. It could cost you money to go to an expert and say, I need you to review my system, right? And whatever I've done, I need you to review it if they're able to. And I need you to see whether or not this is something that is disruptive, right, in this industry. Because really that's what it ends up being. Extraordinary could mean that you take Google and make it a little bit better, right? It could mean that you add an element to your job or to your company that makes it completely different, right? It increases its opportunity. It's a little disruptive. Okay, so Let's look at C. Hidden standards for USCIS. They won't say out loud. Final merits determination. By the way, there is a change coming because of some case law that has happened from the Kazarian approach to where they're kind of going back to a previous approach. We'll see how that all plays out right now. Kazarian is a higher, stricter standard. So we're going to keep moving forward based on that because it's just a federal court, a district court that made that decision. So actually, it may have been the Ninth Circuit. Was it the Ninth Circuit, Swati? Do you remember who did that? I don't think it was the Ninth Circuit.
I remember it came from Nebraska, and
Okay.
I little bit confused with Ninth Circuit and
Okay.
yeah.
I'll see if I can look it up while I'm talking here, but it's not a super strong opinion. It is still a federal court, so it can technically be enforced across the country. But I haven't seen that it's been the level of enforcement has been very pushy right now or very strong. So there is a difference here. And we're looking at professionals love this kind of thing. They like insider knowledge. Okay, so like I said before, your mama will say anything you want in a letter. So will the guy that works with you inside your, especially if he knows it's going to help your immigration process, right? He's going to say what you need him to say. So you need to make sure those letters are still valid because it's people that have been with you working in the trenches. So those are still good, but you need to add other letters that are talking about an outsider's perspective of your work. Those are the letters that hold the greatest weight for showing, okay, this isn't just mom being a cheerleader for her son or her daughter. This is now an outsider who's an expert in this area, looking at whatever this person has done and saying, this stuff is amazing, right? This stuff is extraordinary. And I use the words amazing, extraordinary, because that is the standard. It's not just he's good at his job. Right. And I think a lot of people get confused with that. I've got 15 years of experience and I'm really good at my job. It's like, that's not enough anymore. You have to show that you're extraordinary. And we've seen this kind of shift in reviews happen across the board, from waivers and all other kinds of stuff, U visas. So it's not just in the employment-based world. We've seen it across the board, but it seems very acutely aware. People are acutely aware of it in the employment-based for various reasons, mostly because this is where they have their livelihood hung. So expert letters being discounted, independent versus affiliate experts, right? Specialty or specificity versus fluff. In other words, having a lot of information that is just extra. It's not necessary, but having specificity. And I think we do a good job with Open Atlas, Visa Architect, all them. They do a good job at making sure on that the specificity shows specific things that you've done inside that organization and how they've improved that organization. And then letter architecture that works, right? Making sure that it's broken down in the way that it's supposed to, having the creds of the person that is writing it, right? And then having your creds, and then having what you've specifically done and how that's made a difference. And then the end being, because of all of this, right? You tie it together in the conclusion. Because of all this, the person writing the letter, am recommending this person for an EB-1A or O-1A for extraordinary ability. So evidence hierarchy. Obviously, they like objective evidence over subjective, okay? People looking from the outside in. Media, citations, revenue, patents, and awards. And then some of the evidence backfires because when they look at it, they're like, this is obviously, like we said, thou doth protest too much fluff, right? And then building a good national interest, this is specifically for national interest cases, having alternative evidence, business traction as a national impact, and job creation and innovation framing. So we could talk about EB-5 if you guys want to as well. But we're definitely seeing that shift, right? And so it's very important that your application, at the letters involved in your application, be robust, not just subjective, but also objective. You can still use these subjective ones, right? Which is, I'm the person that works in this company, and I believe that this has improved our company because we've seen it in the metrics. Whereas an objective person coming out and going, well, it's not just this company. If this was applied to 12 different companies that work in the same sphere, every one of them would be improved by the technology that they've created. Um, so that's what I've got for you guys today. I hope that that's helpful. And so I'm open to any questions that you may have. And I'm also going to do a little bit of lookup here real quick, try to remind myself of which court that's out of, the Kazarian changes.
I think, Michael, that's Eighth Circuit, but I'm not sure. You please check from your side. We have a question by Nick. He's asking, any advice for marketers with experience in high-profile campaigns currently on TN visa, hoping to switch to O1 and or EB2 NIW in case USCMA gets dissolved and to switch to dual intent or GC?
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about USMCA getting dissolved. That's not likely to happen. That's not likely to happen because the USMCA was recreated from NAFTA under the first Trump administration. So he's still good partners. I understand the trepidation that can come with the difficulty that has happened between Canada and in Mexico with the US, right? So we have the prime minister and the presidents barking, right? They're like, oh, you're good. You just have to remember that our deficit, our trade deficit with them is in the thousands of percents. So we literally keep those countries running. And I know that sounds very prideful, but it's true. Mexico its economy wouldn't exist without the US. The only thing they have that isn't US based is really oil. And they'd have to find other trade partners to get that oil. And then Canada is the same way. The majority of its stuff, and I know they just created a new compact with China. And so they're going to have this big new compact with China, and that's fine. But you're talking about a border country versus a world across the world country. And you have to look at the economy. So China's economy is shrinking, not growing right now. Because of everything that's going on, because the U.S. once again is its largest trading partner as well, larger than any other country in the world by like hundreds of percent. So I think that's a premature thought, thinking that USMCA is going to get dissolved. It's been around for 30 years. And it has worked really well for the automotive industry, steel, and all kinds of stuff, and even alcoholic beverages from Canada, wood, all kinds of stuff, right? So I don't think that's going to go away. But it's still not a bad idea, since TN visa is a temporary visa, right? It can go on forever. You can renew it as many times as you want. It's not like the H-1B, right? There's no cap on renewals. But it is still a temporary visa, which means there's no direct path from TN to green card. Whereas EB-1A is a direct path, right? So now you switch, you apply for EB-1A. Now, remember, O-1A is not. So you would be in the same boat as with the TN. And if the USMCA were going to be pushed to be dissolved, you're talking about, this is a congressional act, right? So this is a law that exists. This is a treaty. This is not something that just happened via presidential edict, although treaties are signed by the president. But this is more. This is more in depth than that. There's congressional action here, which means that it would have to go through Congress. Right now, Congress can't agree on anything. So we could see a diminution of trade between the countries, but in order to dissolve it completely, because it is law, it would have to go through Congress. I don't think that's going to happen. But if you are looking at, now I have all the ability and expertise, and I've shown myself as an extraordinary person in an area, then moving to an EB-1A is a very positive thing to do. But I think you're going to have a very difficult time in marketing generally to be able to move to an EB-1A. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that the broader your area is, the more difficult. So you have people who are in the technology world. You have people that are in computer sciences, which is a subset of technology. You have people that in computer sciences specifically are doing framework building and programming. And then inside that subset of a subset, you have people who work, for instance, in AI. Right. And so you're going all the way down. And then you have subsets inside AI. Like, what are you doing in the AI, right? Are you building out the frameworks? Are you building out the production side of it? What are you doing inside AI? So marketing is this huge broad umbrella that is basically a whole key element of a business, right? So you're talking about business only has a few key elements. Marketing sales, production, management, finances, so on and so forth. So since it's one of this large area, you'd have to show that you're way down here in one of the subsets of marketing where you have made a real impact. And so I think that would be very difficult. Also, I agree. I think the same thing is true of management consulting, which is another TN that you're allowed to do even without a degree, but showing that you are high enough level. And yeah, I got you, Nick. Just want a visa just in case it gets dissolved. Doing an O1A, remember, O1A still requires extraordinary ability. So it's not like you're going to get off the hook by trying to move to an O1A. So you just have to make sure that you meet the qualifications. And if you have the proper degrees, maybe having H1B as your backup, I don't know. Because first of all, I don't think TN's going anywhere. But if it were, then at that point, you would have to really evaluate to see what you have available, because there's the H1B, which goes in the lottery, right? There's the O1, the EB1. If you're doing something in a specific area that's of national interest, which marketing in general is not, but maybe you're marketing. We were just talking to Nick the other day, and he was talking about how a person is doing financial advising for low income, families and people of a certain ethnic group, which they don't have a lot of access to. So maybe it is of national interest for that specific ethnic group to be given the better opportunity for investment and so on and so forth. So it's not like there can't be theories of cases put together for it, but that would have to be looked at once we come to that bridge, like kind of cross it then. Any other questions?
If you guys have any other questions, please drop down or can unmute yourself and also ask.
I had a question. When you're about to begin the process of, looking into who can write you an expert letter, is there a process you should follow? Circle of influence. Do you reach out to the farthest person you know of and then reach out to cold email people? Like, how do you begin the process of really reaching out for expert letters?
So I'll let Swati take most of this, but the original methodology is first you want to determine people in your sphere of influence. Who do you already know? And that includes people that work with you that have a certain level of expertise, people who are your supervisors that have a certain level of expertise, the CEO of the company that you work for. But what we're saying is that making sure that those letters are sufficiently in depth and sufficiently specific, but then also moving outside that circle of influence and sphere of influence and moving out to others. So being able to cold email a person that's a high level, usually what I would do is see if there are people that do consulting on this kind of thing, right? For instance, there's this guru that's an AI guy and he does consulting for companies. That would be the kind of guy. And since he already does consulting, he's used to receiving remuneration or payment for jobs that he does, like specific projects. So a project would be checking out what I've done, seeing my history, reviewing my credentials, and then writing a letter recommending me, or at least seeing if you can write a letter recommending me. So it's going to be another cost element, no doubt. There's going to be another cost element added to your normal applications because these guys aren't just people that write things for everybody. Somebody comes to me and asks them to write a recommendation letter for law school. I don't charge them for that, right? But it has to be a person that I know that I'm comfortable writing a letter of recommendation for. This is outside of that. This is going to somebody that you don't know that does this for a living, that may write letters for a living, but mostly probably consults for a living, and then having them, you'd have to pay them for their time to review, to verify, and then if they feel comfortable recommending, to recommend. So that's the way I would do it. Swati, do you have anything to add there?
Yes. So Sam, if you are preparing for O1, EB1, or even EB1 IW, the very first step that you have to do when you start looking or thinking about the expert letter is start shortlisting the recommenders who would be the right fit for your critical role backup or the criterias that you are and your attorney is planning for. So it totally depends upon the criterias that you are planning for to support with your letter of recommendations. Usually, the criterias that supports letter of recommendation supports is critical role. Sometimes somebody is having like award or press or other authorship articles. It's just one letter of recommendation which talks about it. So who would be the best people who can support you would be somebody from your current organization, the current employer, and having leadership management people, C-suite level people, VP, director, anybody who is, you can say, senior to you. Even your immediate senior manager is also fine. Um, Somebody who is your ex-employer with the same capacity that I just explained. Now, who else can do it for you? Your professors can write it for you. Um, People who are in the same domain but are not working together, but like you and other person is not working together, can also be the person who can write it for you. So it totally depends upon the criteria, for which criterias you want to have your letter of recommendation supportive in evidence. Most of the time it's critical role that is needed. Okay, so in those terms you can reach out the list of people that I have said. Now it's about the letter of recommendation I stated. Now there is another set of letters that is called independent testimonial letters, which is very different from critical. Independent testimonial letters talk about people who are not in your field, but they know that you are doing some amazing stuffs in your field, and they are also at a very high level. So they can also come forward and write and recommend for you, and those letters are usually highlighted in the final determination section of your petition. So it totally depends upon which criteria and who would be. So it needs a lot of evaluation in terms of understanding what kind of projects you are going to go for it and how it works.
Very good. Thank you, Swati. So I did look up the court, and it was Nebraska, a district court, which is the lowest level federal court in Nebraska. And it did not vacate the opportunity for USCIS to use the Kazarian precedent. So the judicial authority remains intact. It was considered unlawful on the final merits analysis in the agency's process. So what that means for real life is going to play out over the next several months. Since it was just a district court, it's only one. USCIS may appeal it, or they may just say, you know what, bump you to that judge and just keep moving forward using the process of determinations. But this could mean that it opens up people who were denied EB1A previously based on the use of the agency process under the Kazarian precedent. So we'll see how it plays out. Just something to keep on your radar. But no, that's good information, Swati. Sam, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Good, of course.
Any other person, any other questions, anything coming in mind? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Hello, Swati. This is Alice. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Swati, you just mentioned about the independent expert opinion letter. So I currently already have an RFE, and I am in the process of securing those independent expert for me to write the letters. And then is there a suggested amount of letters you would recommend, or is it more about the depth and quality of the letter itself? Like, for example, maybe 1 or 2 good expert opinion letter would suffice.
Yes, see, it's always quality over quantity. I believe USCIS see through it, and it's always depth over surface level that USCIS looks for it. So there is no such amount of letter of recommendations or testimonial letters or independent testimonial letters we suggest. It totally depends that what your petition's narration or strategy looks like and how much depth is needed in each of the criterias. Most of the time, it is beneficial to support the objective evidence that they are inside the petition, but it does not mean that only letter of recommendations are needed. There are other evidence also, but yes, independent validation is very much needed to make sure that USCIS looks through independent lens as well. So there is no certain amount of testimonial letters that is needed. It totally depends how the RFE looks like, what is expected in the RFE, plus how the primary petition was filed. A lot of evaluation is needed, and then it looks up maybe 2 or 3, maybe even sometimes it's only one that is expected or needed.
Mm-hmm.
So it completely depends upon the tone of the RFE as well. That is how the study looks like. Michael, would you like to add something?
No, I agree 100%. It is quality over quantity. And you do have to look at the aggressiveness on the RFE, because sometimes they'll throw what we call the kitchen sink RFE, which is everything. Like, oh, and you're like, I've already submitted half of this stuff. Like, why are you asking for it again? Well, that tells you that they didn't do a great review of it, right? So then there's less difficulty in overcoming some things there, because maybe they were just trying to buy themselves time in premium processing. But if the tone is very specific and very clear, like, this is where you're really falling short and you better provide me something or I'm gonna deny this, right? Then making sure that you have, and if there could be only one super, main expert in an area. And it's like trying to get that person to write you a letter. That's your person, right? And that would be the strongest letter that you could get. I got Albert Einstein to write me a letter, right? So it could be that that's the only thing that you need. So generally it is quality over quantity.
And a follow-up question on that. So I suppose the title, like their current title, wouldn't matter a lot if they do have a profound experience in the area that I'm doing my petition for, and then they can provide good insights, then the titles wouldn't matter that much. Correct?
Not the title, but how you back up their credentials. It matters a lot.
Okay.
So it's not just that they wrote a letter. It's here's why this person's opinion matters, right? Because that's what it is. It's like I could get anybody to write a letter, but why would it matter? So it's about backing up. So it's not just the letter. It's also like their CV, their previous work experience, especially if their title doesn't match what you're trying to do. Even more so, you want to back up why their opinion should matter at all to USCIS.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to add one line, Elise. That is, when such kind of letters are added, very specifically, the first paragraph of the letter must talk about the recommender very aggressively and insightful. So what all the achievements has been achieved by the recommender, how he has maintained the professional, continuity, and where he stands right now. So these all things matter a lot in the first paragraph to explain the, personality as well as the achievements that the recommender has achieved, and hence he is eligible to recommend for you for this particular visa petition. That's how the first paragraph must look like.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. We have like Sumaya. Hey, Sumaya.
Yes, I have. Thank you for an insightful session. I have a couple of questions. So based on the same lines which Alice was asking, first question, when you say that the first paragraph or the first section of the letter should talk about the credentials of the recommended themselves, I completely understand and I'm aware of that. But the challenge is that sometimes, for example, I'll give a generic example here, not my specific case, that you are asking for a letter of recommendation from a government or a military who has adopted your developed equipment or solution. In that scenario, specifically if it's a military of a country, their job is very confidential in nature in general, and military doesn't like to talk about their own credentials and a lot of things. But that's a huge support for my case, because my work has been adopted by a military and government of a major country. Now, the challenge there is that I can get a letter, but the person or the individual who are willing to give me the letter and will mention that, of course, military has adopted my built robots, they are not willing to talk about their own credentials because of the confidentiality of nature of military itself and their job. So how to tackle that type of scenario?
Okay.
That's different.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Swati.
I totally understand and agree, because these are like very, high command positions, and they believe in secrecy and confidentiality, because however it is. Also, one part of the two things over here. Number one, it is very much important to them that this is going to be submitted to the USCIS, which is already an authority, and it is not going to be a leak anywhere, anytime. One authority is submitting a referral for a person to the another authority. This is how the channelization looks like. Number two, if it is a problem, and it's usually comes across to my table as well, that I have somebody from government or like a mayor or governance who want to write it, but they are okay, but they are not okay to completely let the letter speaks about what all their achievements are. But there has to be a surface level of understanding what that person do, if it is not too much if in depth. And at the end, you can just mention about, since usually the letter in the end does includes that due to the confidentiality that needs to be maintained for the authority or the organization that I work, I cannot like reveal many things. And that works a lot, because at the end, at the salutation, that person is going to sign off with the title that he contains, and that matters a lot.
Also,
Sure.
back
So
up
it
for
sounds-
that, to add on to
So-
Swati, back up for that would be like, for instance, if you already have an order, if you have like an order that has been placed for whatever product you're doing, then adding that to show that this person is actually speaking with authority and that they've actually done an order, right? That's actually, in my opinion, if I look at everything from a USCIS officer's review stance. I'm very conservative, right? So I look at it and say, I wouldn't qualify 90%. And so what I'm looking is, does this meet the 10% that I'm looking for? And if that's the case, I'm more conservative than a lot of USCIS officers, but I look at it from that standpoint and say, well, if there's only 200 plus governments in the country, in the world, sorry. So if one of them has chosen to use your technology, I don't care if it's a tiny country or if it's a big country. If one of them has chosen to use your technology over everyone else that's probably working in that technological field, for me, that's extraordinary, right? You've been selected out of 200 plus countries to have your stuff, whatever you built or whatever you created, be what they're using for their governmental purposes. That's extraordinary ability to me. So creating a surface level application, the letter that says, yeah, we're doing this, and then backing it up with the authoritative piece of evidence that says, check it out. Here's proof that they're using whatever. I already have an order placed. If you have that, then I think that would be a huge plus to proving the validity of that letter.
Yeah,
Thank you. No, so I was just saying thank you, Swati and Michael. I think I understand it. I think, Swati, you made a point that if I can give towards end of the letter, I can ask the recommender to write that their nature of job is confidential, highly confidential, being part of military, and military operations itself are very confidential. So hopefully that will work. And Michael, to your point, I don't know how much you understand militaries. First of all, it's not a small country. It's a major military and one of the most powerfuls in the world. And military doesn't give any orders for adopting someone's solution. So I worked many years back with that military. I actually didn't work with them directly. I developed a solution. I developed robotics, and then military adopted it. So they bought it all together. And I was still a student at that point in time. So I don't have any order or nothing like that, because military doesn't work like that. The only thing which I can prove at this point in time is to get a letter from the military officials that they have adopted the robots, which I have developed, and they are still using it.
Is your purchase order confidential as well?
there is no purchase order. It's not like that. Military doesn't work like that. I was not a provider at that point in time. I was not working. I was a student. I developed a robotic solution, which was AI based. And that won many national prizes. That's how the military got to know about it. And I was just a very young student, like 21 years old student at that point in time. And they just came forward and they said that we are adopting it. That's how it works in that country. And it's a major military.
Okay.
And it's one of the 7 most powerful militaries in the world. So I just don't want to get into I don't know how to say it. I don't want to get into legal troubles with anyone because they're very powerful military. And I don't want to get into that space for a thing which they have adopted back in, almost 15, 20 years back. And they're still using it because the solution was pretty advanced for a time. So I don't have any purchase order because I was a 21 years young student in bachelor's and my project won national prize. And that's how military got to know about it and they adopted it.
Okay. In the US, they do what are called RFPs. So we usually there's a paper trail, but
I'm pretty familiar with that, but RFPs and everything, because I studied in the US later on. But unfortunately, in that country, when military adopts something, it's not like that.
Okay.
And my next question, quickly on building on this and what probably Alice has mentioned slightly, and I'm just trying to understand it better. So I have been in executive roles for past 7 to 8 years. When I say executive roles, I have been with startups mostly as a CXO, like reporting directly into CEO or board of directors. My challenge is that when I'm trying to get the recommendation letters from my previous employers, so many people who started with me, like for example, I employer, which is a Fortune 100 company in US, and I did significant work with them, very impactful work, which is used by US as well as globally. And I have all the numbers and everything. The challenge which I'm facing is that people who are willing to give me the letters, of course, all of them have not progressed well in their career to be CXOs. At that point in time, they were my peers. So now, for example, if their title is something like manager or product manager or project manager, and at that point in time, my title was similar as well. But then later on in my career, I progressed really fast and I became a CXO. And for last 7 to 8 years, I have been there. My question is, which I'm trying to understand, that how much the title of that individual matters if they are giving me a recommendation letter for that point in time and for whatever I developed, let's suppose 7 years or 8 years earlier when I was working with that Fortune 100 company and which is currently deployed in the US and globally and earning millions of dollars, and that solution was developed by me.
Do you want me to answer, Swati?
Yeah. I see a contradiction here completely, according to what I do understand is in every letter of recommendation, we have to show that what has recommended it, why he is eligible to recommend for you. If that first criteria meets in the first paragraph, then only it makes sense to build that particular letter of recommendation. If the progression of that particular recommender is not at par as he can recommend for you, then there is a substantial understanding of mine that the recommender must get changed.
Yeah, but the challenge is that if I am at a CXO level for past 7 to 8 years, the challenge is that people who are at the CXO level in that company currently, first of all, they are not aware of my work because I cannot ensure that. And then secondly, it's not easy to get a CXO level letter from a Fortune 100 company. That's why I can only ask my peers who were together with me at that point in time, and they knew about my work. And I have other evidence, for example, media publication or media, like my name is not there, but media said that this solution has been developed and this solution has been deployed, saving X millions of dollars. And the other proof which I have that I built that solution is an internal mail where my name has been specifically mentioned by then VP of that company, saying that congratulations on developing such a innovative solution. So those two evidence is there. But the challenge is that if I want to support those two evidences with the recommendation letter, like the VPs and SVPs of Fortune 100 companies, I don't know how many people know about, Fang Mang or Fortune 100 companies. They are not willing or allowed to give you the letters of this type. So
Yep.
that is my limitation, and it's not something specific to me. It's a generic industry limitation. So that's why I'm trying to understand
Yep.
better what are my options here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yes, Michael.
No, all I was going to say is you have to remember that extraordinary ability is what they're determining today about you, right? So, but that includes your history. So there are various kinds of letters. It could be that the person is not necessarily giving a letter of recommendation, but giving a letter of support. And those are very different letters. And I don't think they're used enough, but a letter of support would say, I knew this person when she was working here. It doesn't matter what their role is today. What matters is I worked with this person when they were working here. This is the thing they came up with, and this is how it benefited. And I know that this person, because I've stayed in contact, has moved from where we are now to much higher than her peers, which is extraordinary ability. Remember, ordinary people working in your similar situated job, how have you progressed above them? Well, you've either created a solution that was better, or you moved up in title. You've grown, right? And so working for a Fortune 100 with a CXO title obviously is growth, right? If the rest of your peers didn't do that. So that shows that you are extraordinary as compared to your peers. But that wouldn't be a letter of recommendation as much as it would be a letter of support, validating a specific thing that you did or things that you did that were extraordinary and that have now taken you to the next level. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So
Michael, it makes a lot of sense. And thank you very much for saying that. I think I was not aware of letter of support. So you gave me a new avenue, because I was really struggling with this fact that I did build those solutions. And I mean, I cannot manage or control the career trajectories of other people, right? So I progressed well in my career and I became a CXO. But my peers at that point in time, they didn't progress well. And now if I have to get the letter from them, because I cannot get a letter from a current CXO of that Fortune 100 company, because company policy doesn't allow that, then and the VPs at that point in time have already retired, or some of them have even passed away. So the point is that I have to find a solution in order to support my existing evidence, which is two things: an internal email congratulating me on developing that solution, and an external media which talks about that solution, their deployment, the cost saving globally. But of course, it didn't mention my name, because that's not how Fortune 100 companies work. So thank you so much, Michael, for bringing in this letter of support thing. I was not even aware of it. I will go and do my research on that.
You may not find it, because I just made it up. And so you have to remember, USCIS are people looking at applications to determine whether or not it meets the criteria that's available. Okay. And a lot of people get stuck inside boxes. I have to have this. I don't have to have that. Yeah, there are things that you have to have, but that doesn't invalidate other things. And it's a logical solution. This person does not have the title to recommend me as an expert in an area, but this person has key knowledge. So look at it as if it was a court hearing. I bring in a witness. This witness is a janitor. Okay, well, does the janitor have credibility? He may. Who cares if he's a janitor? The point is that he witnessed something, and now he can bring incredible evidence about what he witnessed, even if he's not like, I'm the CEO of this company. He witnessed something, and he can provide support as credible evidence to what he witnessed. So don't get so tied into what lawyers have told you need to have from USCIS. USCIS is looking at it from a judicial standpoint, right? They're an executive agency, but they're looking at it from a very adjudicative standpoint. They're seeing, the evidence that you're providing, this is the common evidence, but that doesn't mean it disincludes anything else that you could provide. And that's why almost everything that USCIS puts out, it says any other evidence that meets the qualification or any other evidence that proves. Why? Because they may have criteria and they're like, these are the things that we like, that normal people do, but not everybody fits neatly inside a box. And so just remember, you are not tied to whatever plan somebody placed on you. We can do things that go outside of what other people do commonly to provide sufficient backup. Now, that's not going to replace letters of recommendation in other areas. And I would say that you'll still want somebody who's an expert, independent opinion to validate, right? But this provides evidence that you did something that was extraordinary, and here's a witness to it.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful. And in interest of time, I just have one last question. Can I ask now, or should I wait for other people and keep it for the end?
Swati?
You can ask. So
Okay, so this is not related to recommendation letter per se, but I'm just trying to understand your expert opinion better, both of you. So if somebody is a Fulbright scholar, for people who don't know what is Fulbright is, Fulbright scholar means that the US State Department themselves has funded the education of this individual. So do you think that it's a major award or considered to be a major award? Because from my country, when I got my Fulbright scholarship, the acceptance rate for Fulbright is 0.0005%, which is way less than any Ivy League school. And I went to a top 10 school or university in the US as a Fulbright scholar, and then I graduated on roll of honor from there as well. So do you think that I can use it in major awards or something like that?
I'm going to say you're fretting a whole lot about an application that seems to me to be very approvable. So yes, I would definitely use the Fulbright scholarship as an award that you have received to show that they have validated your ability. So, and yes, that is extraordinary. Getting a Fulbright scholarship. I mean, I have an IQ of 157. I didn't get a Fulbright scholarship. So I didn't apply for it, but I didn't get it either, right? So my point is that it's obviously extraordinary to have received something that is that competitive and that rare. So it's very competitive and it's very rare. So yes, that should definitely be used. Swati, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just about to say that yes. I mean, please use it and use it like in full strength, because it will going to add a lot in the petition, and it is I mean a big yes. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So let's answer this question really quick for Nick before we move on to, I think Krishna was next, but Nick said, if I just renewed my TN for 3 years, should I try an EB2 and IW01 since they take 3 years or more? The answer is 100% yes. I mean, so it's about you and whether or not your application is going to qualify. So is it a waste of money, right? That's really the question here. Not should you do it, but do you qualify to do it? And if you qualify to do it, then I would definitely do it, because you're right. And then if your TN's about to expire before it's approved, then yeah, 100%, you just renew your TN. So that's yes. Both of those are yeses. I think Krishna was next.
Hi. Thank you for arranging this seminar, and it's a lot of valuable information. So one question from me is recently, so I'm preparing my application, and I reached out to a guy. He never worked with me. I wanted him to give me a recommendation letter on original contribution, and that's related to my patents and some of the papers I published and so on. And he was willing to do it, but then in his company, it's being a big company, Fortune 500 company, he got a memo within the company that if he's signing any letters in the immigration matters, he should first consult the HR. And then when he approached the HR kind of grilled him, scrutinized him, and then finally he said, like, okay, this, you can sign this, but there cannot be a mention of the company name in that letter. So how do I take it? Is that still valuable letter for me if he's a senior director in that company and he has very high reputation in the field? I don't want to lose that, but at the same time, I'm like now second thoughts whether it's valuable or not for me. Can you please?
100%. 100% it's valuable. The fact is, it's not about the company. Although one thing that he will put in that first paragraph is currently a VP at a Fortune 500 company, right? He just wouldn't put it on their letterhead and wouldn't sign it VP of whatever in that. I mean, his credentials are his credentials, not the company's, right? So it's all about what he has to bring to the table as an independent voice and how then he can say what you've done is extraordinary. So whether or not he can mention the company is not actually the most important thing. The fact that he works as a VP in a certain area for a Fortune 500 is the validation for his credentials as well, because he wouldn't have been hired. Fortune 500s, you don't get jobs like VP just because you know somebody. There's no nepotism, right? That's why they're Fortune 500s and not smaller companies that bring in lower talent just because it's the cousin of the boss. So the point is the fact that he is the VP of, let's say, operations or technology or whatever it is, inside of a Fortune 500 company, even without mentioning what that company is, that validates it because it's a Fortune 500.
Okay, great. So he's going to mention all his previous companies and his roles, but yeah, this part was like not clear to me. Thank you a lot. And a subsequent question on the same topic. I have been working for my current company for about 12 years now. Right, so a lot of my achievements are in the current company, but I also had worked in the previous companies. So how far back should I go when it comes to critical role recommendation letters? Is there any guidelines, like it has to be like most relevant, most recent, or it can go back to say 20 years back? And so that's one of the confusion I have.
In that case, the more the better. I mean, you want to show that you've grown in your career and you've made extraordinary achievements across a 20-year span. Well, then that's just more. That's just better for your application, right? Like this guy just didn't become extraordinary yesterday. He's been doing extraordinary stuff for 20 years, right? So in that case, the more the better. But it's not just quantity; it's also quality. Like, what did you specifically do that was beneficial, right? What did you do that improved? What did you do that shows extraordinary ability? So there is no hard. Once again, immigration, there are very rarely hard and fast rules. Most of immigration is based on what's called discretion. The officer in their discretion is reviewing to see if in their discretion you meet the criteria. If you do meet the criteria for extraordinary ability, that person recommends you for approval. If that person says, I do not believe, or there's more, somebody else needs to do a review of this, then it goes up to a supervisor. If then the supervisor says, I agree with you, we need more information, then that's when an RFE gets issued. And then an RFE is responded to, and then the same process happens again. And then let's say they say, we still don't have enough to prove that this person meets the qualifications. We're going to either do annoyed or deny. The reason that you have the opportunity to appeal that is because it's an abuse of discretion. That's what the legal standard is called. So it's not a de novo review, which would be all from the beginning. It's abuse of discretion. How did this person abuse their discretion in not validating something that you gave them that you think they didn't have the right to have that opinion? I think they were wrong legally, right? So it was an abuse of discretion. That's why you can't just say, I don't like your opinion, right? You have to give reasoning as to why their solution or their response was incorrect under the law. I believe this meets this qualification because of X, Y, and Z. And then the BIA would look at that and say, okay, do we agree with you or do we agree with the officer, right? So you just have to remember that. These are not bright line rules in most of immigration. The difference is it's more gray area, it's fuzzy. And so you have one officer that make one decision, another officer that make another decision, right? They're not all the same. They're not automatons, right? They're not Tsunami's robots, right? They're AI robots. They're actual people. And they get assisting tools. But just remember that you're talking about people who are reviewing applications based on their discretion. I've been trained. I know what I'm looking for. Did I find what I'm looking for? No. And then you have the ability to say, well, you didn't find what you were looking for, but that's only because you weren't looking right, right? This is the legal reason why it should be that I met that. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense a lot. And the one last question. So how many letters do you think I should target for critical role, and how many letters for the original contribution?
Swati, you can answer that. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, there is no hard and fast rule, Krishna, for the counts of the letter of recommendation. It totally depends for the critical role. See, as you asked how many years of experience I do have, always remember that we need to prove sustained acclamation as well in the petition. And the more you have, the more it looks good. And it more supports, basically. So there is no hard and fast rule. I know myself when I prepared the cases. So there were cases I did exhibited 21 letter of recommendations, and there are cases which I stacked like around 8 letter of recommendations, and there are cases where I just stacked 3. All of them got approved. So it's something which depends upon the intensity, narration, and strategy based. it is not stagnant that, okay, every case must have 10, 8, 9, 7, 6, nothing like that. It totally depends upon what do you want to prove, what kind of projects or kind of leaderships, or you can say the discoveries or innovations you have done, and what is the direction that you want to go ahead on to prove on. And based on that, who would be the right fit person. And one letter suffice even for, one of the issue that you wanted to prove. So there is no a stagnant number anybody could tell you. It depends upon how your petition looks like, the direction, the strategy, the narration, and everything, because each and every petition and each and every case vary from
It's
each
different.
other.
Everything's different.
Okay. Thanks
That
a
help,
lot
Krishna?
for both of you.
Of
Yes,
course.
it does. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's move on to Muru. I think we have another 3 minutes, Swati.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for the powerful session, Mike and Swati. So I had two questions. One is, I think in a lot of places in today's discussions, you guys mentioned about the credibility of the letter. So my question is, there is two choices, right? So either we can get a recommendation letter on a company letterhead or on a blank sheet of paper. So I know a lot of companies has restrictions to be issued on a company, not with that. So from an USCIS perspective, do you think that getting a letter on a company letterpad would have a winning edge, or your perspective on this?
Go ahead, Swati. You're shaking your head yes, and I'm shaking my head no. So go ahead.
Yes. So see, it's not a blocker. First thing, getting a letter of recommendation on a company letterhead is not a blocker that you should get it. It's not even mandatory. If you get it, it enhances. If you don't get it, you can still work on A4 size paper. You just have to make sure the salutations are correct. What is expected by the USCIS is the name of the person, the designation of the person, the contact details, and the office where he's working, and the office address. That's it. And you can mention all these in the salutation, but it's not at all mandatory that you have to get a letterhead and then you go for it. So it's not a blocker, but yeah, it enhances and beautify your petition. And to make anything beautiful is always a yes. Yes, Mike.
Very Indian of you there, Swati. You make it beautiful. That makes it better, right? Yeah. So in America, we're very we're a little more like less is better in a lot of ways. And so, which is good and bad in many ways. It is not the company that's recommending you, it's the person.
Of course.
A letterhead is saying, my company is doing something, and then I'm inside the company. So I agree with Swati. It makes it look prettier and it makes it look better, right? But I don't think it in my opinion, I don't think it enhances, because it's not the company that's actually recommending you. It's the individual. And so if it were the company, like I need you to have a company saying something about you, that's different. 100% letterhead required. But since these are individuals that happen to work, they're doing this in their individual capacity. And they're in their individual capacity, I can show USCIS why my opinion should matter. And here is my opinion. That's what you're doing. So yes, having it for providing more, beauty, making it look more crisp. Yeah, I think letterhead's great. But if a company is not willing to put it on letterhead, it's not the company doing it anyway, it's the individual. And I know that all the Fortune companies will not do that. You have to do a ton of stuff in order to run it up the flagpole, because then that becomes a quasi-political statement for them, right? And so it's like, no, you can't put our name associated with it. And so that's kind of, in my opinion, that's kind of how it works. But if you can get it on letterhead, I do agree with Swati. It makes it prettier. And psychologically, an officer may look at that and be like, oh, no, oh, that gives it another step up. But I'm not sure how much actual weight it has. I should say it that way.
Awesome, thanks. I think one last question. So I think whenever we ask some recommendation letters, right, people get scared, and then they go to HR, and then HR goes to the legal firm, the immigration law firm, right? So in my case, definitely, I think the HR will reach to the immigration attorney firm who works on my H1 and all this stuff, right? I don't know, this question is weird, but typically, when the immigration firm being asked by the HR, hey, one guy is asking like this, is it okay to give it or something like that? I mean, how do they? If they come back with the questions, how do we justify to the other immigration firm actually who are not working on my EB-1A?
Well, any immigration firm worth its salt will know that you providing a recommendation letter for EB-1A in your personal capacity does not have any relevance or any liability. That's all they're looking at. Does this hold liability, right? And so there's no liability. I mean, you're just doing a recommendation, right? So I'm not even sure why there would be a question when it comes to that. They may want to look at it and be like, oh, does this person actually qualify? I doubt they would do that. I wouldn't do that. And I own a law firm, an immigration firm. So I'm not sure, other than just saying, what does this letter look like and what do we need to do? I can't imagine that the conversation gets much further than that because there's no liability. It's not like, and a good thing to do, it probably would be to do for you guys, Swati, is maybe write up a letter, write up a memorandum for people when they're asking for letters of support that says, here's what you're doing, and these are the liabilities. And obviously liabilities are going to be zero. You're doing it in your personal capacity, not from your company, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then that way it answers a lot of those questions beforehand that allow people to feel a little more free. But that's what exactly, if it goes through HR to an immigration firm that represents that company, then that's exactly what that any law firm that knows what they're doing, that's exactly what they'll tell them. There's no liability for your individual capacity person working for this company to provide a letter of recommendation based on previous work. So
basically,
Awesome.
I feel that Muru, these questions comes when that person is actually using the letterhead, because for a fact, I know that letterhead carries a lot of value because it's company's letterhead. But if he's providing in his individual capacity, then it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, actually, see, I give you an example. You and him might have been working in some different company. You left that company, you joined this present one. He left that company and he's somewhere else. So actually, you have worked in that company. There is nothing related with the current company or organization that both of you are working. So he's actually presenting or recommending you on the part of something that you have achieved in the last company. So it is an individual capacity. So there is no relation of the organization involvement. And yeah, Michael, I noted it out about the, writing a memo and explaining the things.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks much. Thank you both.
Of course. Thank you, Swati. Thank you guys for being here. Hopefully it was helpful.
It was awesome, Michael. Thank you so much, Michael, for taking out some time to guide us and assist us. It was very nice. We'll see you all again very soon with new topic. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Michael. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.